Okay, apologies in advance for the audio and video quality here. I am not a professional YouTuber with nice video recording equipment or nice computers or experience with this kind of thing. This is a tutorial for the MMO Gamepad overlay, installation and setup, default control scheme, and how it is intended to be used to play a game. Once you have the zip file downloaded, open it up, copy the one file there, paste it somewhere, and we're done. You'll want to put it in an empty folder somewhere so that any files it generates, which it will generate in the same place it is at, will not interfere with anything else. Open it for the first time, accept the disclaimer, which will only appear once, and you're now in the Profile Select menu. You can see here that it actually does respond to gamepad input as well, because you could potentially use it during gameplay to switch profiles if you have different ones for different characters. Speaking of, profiles are control schemes essentially. It's intended you could have more than one for a different game or different characters. It comes with 3 defaults and some custom ones that are my personal ones just to demonstrate how you can customize the defaults. You can just make one of these directly, or you can create a new one and base it on one of those if you'd like, or make it completely empty. We're going to base it on the Monsters and Memories default control scheme. It will ask if you want to automatically launch the target game as a convenience feature. We'll say no. And the app is now running. We will now check to see if it is actually doing anything by moving around the right analog stick and making sure the mouse cursor moves. Just note that the lag you see here between my thumb moving and the mouse cursor moving is a video recording thing I don't know how to fix and not actual lag in the application itself. Now I will close the app to show you what happens the second time you run it. It will have the profile that we've created there. It's the only one to load. You can still make the other ones by entering a new profile name here. Or you can just click auto load and not worry about the screen anymore if you only ever have one control scheme you want to use. So these files it generates are the actual control scheme itself. It is text files that the application reads to know what buttons should do what. The one we generated here is empty, except for saying to use M&M default as its parent. That means that anything in M&M default, we can put something of the same name here and it will use this version instead of the default version. As an example of that, the first keybind you see here is assist, and assist is set to actually type /assist into the chat box, which would be pretty clunky if you use assist a lot. So we'll go ahead and copy that over here, and we'll set assist to Shift-0 instead, which is hotbar number 10. So you'll need to put an assist macro in hotbar number 10 in order for this to actually work, but it will be a lot better than typing assist in the chat box every time you want to use it. So there's our example of customization. There's obviously way more you can do with it if you want to delve deep into these files, but that's good enough for now to get us started with actually using this with a game. Actually, before we launch the game, there is another important thing to take care of with the game itself, which is the UI layout. If you haven't changed the UI layout from the defaults in the game, then you can just skip this part. But if you have changed it, be aware that this application needs to know where parts of the UI are for certain parts to work correctly. So there are 3 main ways you can deal with this. The first is that you can, as mentioned, use the default control scheme that we already set up and set the game to use its default UI. The second option is that you can use a customized UI that I made for use with this application and set up the control scheme to be the same. The third option is that you can use whatever UI layout you want, but you will need to edit the profile yourself through this INI file we were messing with before, which I'm not going to cover right now, but you can tell it where different things are and do it that way. So for now, let's say that you are going to use my customized UI layout. You can go and get it from the same download page where you got the application right there. I have put it right here for now. You need to put the files inside here into a certain folder. That folder, which I have open here, let me show you how I got here, is from app data local low, niche world cult, monsters and memories. So here's all the configuration files the game saves. For now, we'll just go ahead and save a backup of these, just as that's a good practice in general. And then we can copy over the ones that I have set up. So put that there, and there we go. All right. So in my zip file, there's a little README here that explains this, but windows.json is the UI layout file. That's the most important thing. Controls is your keybinds, which I have a couple set up for strafing. And there's your macros and your hotbar setup. So we'll go ahead and copy these over. The hotbar and macros is just for the assist key and stuff like that. And we'll paste these into here. Now notice these ones just say char name. It's because you can have a different one for each character. So I have a character named Hodran. We'll go ahead and name that to that. So you'll want to name this to whichever character you're planning to use. Like so. Okay, now we have all that set up. And of course, like I said, you do need to be using my control scheme to go along with it. So we'll go ahead and launch our app again. Go under Profile. We'll create a new profile for Hodran, and we'll just use mine. We'll just make a copy of it. That should work. I need to interject something here about a specific issue of Monsters and Memories and a conflict it has with any software like mine that maps a gamepad to keyboard and mouse. The problem is that the game will detect your controller and react to a button being pressed, but not in any useful way, and it will still detect this button being pressed and react to it, even if you map it to something else with software like mine. The devs have said that they are aware of this issue, but I don't know when they'll be fixing it, so let me show you what the problem is and how you can get around it. The issue is that if you have clicked on certain parts of the UI directly with a mouse or using the gamepad using mouse software like mine, such as the ability book here, if I now press the A button on an Xbox 360 controller or the X button on a PlayStation controller, it will open and close the book still. What it's doing is anytime you click on an UI button in their interface, pushing the A button will click that same button again for you. Now we don't really want that. That will definitely interfere with other things I might want that button to do if I'm constantly opening my spellbook. So we'll go ahead and exit the game for now, and I'll show you how to get around it. There's software you can download. There's a link in the description of this video called HID Hide. You might already have this software if you are using DS4 Windows. It comes with that. This software is specifically made for solving this exact issue by hiding controllers from software that you don't want to detect the controller. Over on the right-hand side, you can click on the releases link here and get the executable down here. Once you've installed that, it will make you reboot your computer, which I've already done that step. So now I'll show you what it looks like the first time you load the HID Hide configuration client. Now this window here, this list, is all the software that will be able to see the controller and nothing else will to see it. I find it better to use this inverse application cloak. By checking that, this list now becomes all the software that can't see a controller and everything else can see a controller. That way you don't have to keep messing with this for other games. So we'll click the minus key here to get rid of this default entry. Click the plus key here. You'll navigate to within your Monsters and Memories folder and find the mmm.exe file. Select that. It'll add it to this list. Go over to the Devices tab. Make sure your controller is checked and Enable Device Hiding is checked. And now we're all configured. We will go back into the game to test this out. Okay, so once again, I'm going to click the ability book button with my mouse here. And now I'm going to switch over my controller and nothing happens. Turn it off with my mouse, pushing the controller, nothing happens. And that's exactly what we want because we want to use that button for something else. Okay, we're ready to start the game. You can see my app down in the corner here. Go ahead and click play. You'll see a green blinking rectangle possibly around the outside edge of the game window. That's just the application letting you know that it has discovered the game window and has sized itself to match. We'll go ahead and load up a character here into the plane of meat. And now we're ready to use the controller. Initially, you start out in what I refer to as cursor mode, which is where you can move with your left analog stick forward and back and turn left and right. And the right analog stick moves your mouse cursor. You can click with the X button, and you can right click with R2. You'll want to probably switch to action mode pretty quickly though by pressing triangle. When you're in action mode, you are now controlling your camera with the right analog stick, as so. Your left analog stick now strafes instead of turns. You can steer with the right analog stick as you're moving. Jump by pushing R3. Duck by holding down L2, which acts like a modifier key, and pushing R3. And auto run by pushing L3. When you're in auto run mode, you steer with the right analog stick, just like normal. But you can also hold down the L2 modifier key again, and then your right analog stick will act as a free look camera, allowing you to look around in any direction without changing which way you're moving. Let go of L2 and you return back to steering with the right analog stick. For the face buttons, X, as mentioned, is used to access cursor mode and click with the cursor. Triangle is used to access action mode, and as I'll talk about more later, to use abilities in that mode. Circle is used to cancel things like menus, close your windows, drop your target, etc. Holding circle for a brief moment is how you sit. Square button is used to click on center screen, which is what that white dot next to my character's head is for, is to aim that. This can be used for opening doors quickly or targeting things if target nearest NPC isn't working to get the exact target you want. Holding square, very importantly, is how you turn on auto attack. It might seem a bit weird that it's on a hold instead of a tap, but I did that because I didn't want to keep accidentally attacking merchants or something. So you have to really mean it by holding the button down for a bit, and as you can see, that enters auto attack mode. Now, a variation of cursor mode is menu mode, I suppose you could call it, where you push start or options. That brings up a menu down in the bottom right, where you can access various settings and commands. If you go under Windows, you can access your inventory and spellbook and such. Now, if you open more than one of these at a time, like inventory and book for scribing spells, you can immediately just use your right analog stick to go back to cursor mode and start clicking on things to navigate those. Also under the menu, you can access the commands submenu, at least in Monsters and Memories, which is invisible right now because of the mode we're in, but normally there's a menu back here where you can do things like invite group members and sit and stuff like that. Another very important one is mem abilities. This will open your book for memorizing spells with a special extra interface. Here you use your D-pad. I should mention before, D-pad navigates all the menus. X confirms, circle goes back. Anyway, you can change the different book tabs, change pages by clicking these. You can also change pages with L1 and R1, or left and right on the analog stick. Anyway, you pick a spell by clicking on it with X, and then you can pick which slot you want to memorize it to and push X again. And circle the back out. Very much quicker than trying to move your cursor around with the right analog stick and pushing X and whatever in order to memorize your spells. A lot of functionality can be accessed through the L2 macros menu. Tap L2 instead of holding it to bring this up, then use your D-pad to navigate to various options. For example, if I wanted to warn my group that there was an ad, I could tap up, left, right, and send the ad message. Obviously, I'm in Notepad right now because there's no chat box in Monsters and Memories to receive these commands in the Plane of Meat mode. Anyway, eventually you can memorize a lot of different direction sequences in order to quickly gain access to various commands. For example, I know that if I tap L2 left, 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 that will cause my pet to attack. If I tap L2 down, up, that will check who's in the current zone. L2 down, down, up will wave. L2 up, up will hail, and so on and so forth. Eventually, you'll have these memorized a lot quicker than you might think. And it allows you to add a lot more options than having a bunch of different button combinations for all of them, like holding L2 plus R1 plus circle or something like that. If you want to add more options on the fly, you can go into the menu, choose some spot you want to add more to, and press and hold that direction for a second. This will bring up a box where you'll obviously have to switch to your keyboard to type it in, but here you can type in the name of a category. We'll just call it tutorial. Now, you can see the under group left is now tutorial. Pushing that will bring me to another set of 4. Each of these can also be another set, and so on. And if I want to add an actual command, let's say I'll press and hold up here, then I type the name I want, so we'll say test, but then a colon after it, and then whatever command I want it to do. Let's say I wanted to do a hotbar button. I could do shift plus a number, shift 8, that'll access my hotbar. If I want to do a slash command, I can put slash time, for instance. I can't type. If I want to say something, I start with a greater than sign. That means just say something in the chat box. Here I'm going to just say hello world, like so. Now you'll see group tutorial test, prints hello world. So that's just a way that you can quickly edit that. You can also do it within the profile text files, but this lets you do it in-game and will edit those files for you. A shortcut to get to your inventory menu rather than using the start button menu is to hold your L2 modifier key and press start. You can also press and hold start and L2 at the same time to open your bags, which I can't demonstrate because I don't have any bags. It is an unfortunate truth in these games that some things just can't be mapped to a keyboard key, and therefore you have to use cursor mode. There's no other way to do it, and inventory management is one of those things. We all know that aiming a mouse cursor with the right analog stick is pretty crappy, so one of the things I've done to help with that is add these hotspot sets that allow you to quickly jump your mouse cursor to different spots on the screen by using the D-pad and pushing in the direction of the next spot you want to jump to. You can see here and probably imagine that this allows for a lot quicker navigation of your inventory window. Unfortunately, there's various different caveats to this. First of all, I haven't set up a lot of things to have these hotspots, and part of the reason for that is that the application has no way of knowing for a lot of windows if they're actually open or not, because there's multiple different ways you can close one, like clicking this X up here. You can see that it still thinks there's an inventory window there and will still jump the mouse cursor to the same spots on the screen. Even worse, remember how we had to set up your UA layout before we started? Part of the reason for that is that if you move this window around, again, it has no idea it's moved, it's still going to target the spots over here. That's why you need to tell the app where the window is going to be and then make sure you lock it and don't move it around. But speaking of moving it around, you may have noticed that I didn't use my right thumbstick to move the window. This is because it's very difficult to hold X and use the right thumbstick at the same time to drag something around. So in the rare case where I do need to left click and drag, the left analog stick will move the mouse cursor instead whenever you're holding X. So as you can see, if I'm not holding X, left analog stick moves my character, but if I'm pressing and holding X, left analog stick acts as a mouse cursor, just for convenience there. A couple other mouse-based shortcuts. If you hold down R1 and push X, that becomes a shift click. If you hold down L1 and click X, that becomes a control click. And L2 and X becomes alt click. And also just holding L2 for a while acts like holding Alt, which makes these little labels pop up and will label things in your bags and stuff. I mostly just use the L1 plus X for grabbing single items from a stack, but I'm sure there will be other uses in the game for the shift click and alt click at some point. A quick side note here, the way that mouse click mode works, the mouse has to click on an empty part of the screen to do mouse click. If it clicks on something else, then you might get something like this. Now the application needs to know where it can right click and left click safely to start mouse click mode, which is set up in your configuration file. By default, it is the top left corner, because I assume that you won't ever have anything up there. You can see that your health bar starts out just slightly down below that, so it should be fine. But if you do find, for instance, if I move this up here, now when I try using mouse click mode with my controller, like so, you will see that it doesn't actually work. I'm not in mouse click mode. I've now picked up this thing instead. So if you see something weird like that, that's why. If you really want something up on the top left corner, you can go into the configuration file and move the mouse click start hotspot to somewhere else. So for instance, I can change this to center X and center Y, for example. And now I'll just go ahead and reload my profile, which I can do from the menu here. There you go. And now it will use the center instead of the corner, which means it doesn't have problems with clicking that window anymore. But I wouldn't recommend using the center because you're very likely going to end up with having your inventory or something there, and then once again, same problem. I tried going into mouse click mode and it doesn't work because it clicks on this inventory menu. So just something to be aware of. As you can see, I am now in Project 99 instead of Monsters and Memories because I want to show how to fight stuff, which you can't do in Monsters and Memories when it's offline, obviously. First, you may have noticed that I'm in first-person mode, which is how I generally like to play EverQuest. But if you want to get out of first-person mode, you can hold the L2 modifier key once again and use up and down on the D-pad. Although I also like to just use the touchpad on my PS4 controller if you have that option. Anyway, first, in order to kill something, you're going to need to target it. There's various different ways to do that. We talked before about you can use the square button to click center screen on things and target stuff that way, although it doesn't work terribly reliably. The major way to do it is using the R1 button, which cycles targets, like so. Now you'll notice when I do that, that it automatically, down in the chat box there, is considering them. So you don't need a separate key for that. But if you want to consider something again, like you didn't notice it in the chat spam or something, just hold R1 for a moment, like so, and it will redo the consider. Also, I don't have anybody here to test it on, but if you hold down L2 and tap R1, that is how you target other players. And holding down R1 for longer there does a who target, at least in this game, which has a who target. Okay, once you've got your enemy targeted, it's time to fight them. Mentioned before, holding square is what activates your auto attack, so pretty obvious there. Abilities is really the big thing in EverQuest, that being spells. In order to use spells, there's a menu up in the top right corner, you've probably noticed. You use your D-pad to navigate this menu, and you use your triangle button to activate it. There's 4 abilities here, 5 in Monsters and Memories. You can then push left and right to change between different bars. Each bar has its own independent memory of where it's at. I like to stick the more offensive stuff on bar 1 and usually buffs and stuff on bar 2. So here I'll tap triangle and use my buff on myself here, like so. And there you go. Also, hotbar buttons will appear here. I can have a corpse button and sense heading and stuff. So yeah, a lot of games that, a lot of people, I guess, that try to make control schemes for MMOs will do things like holding L1 plus the face buttons is 4 abilities, and holding R1 plus the 4 face buttons is more abilities, and R1 plus L1 is more abilities, and L2 plus whatever is more abilities and stuff. And I'm not saying that's bad, but the problem with it is that you can get easily confused about which button combination you have to press for a certain ability. It's actually great for the fact that you have instant access to the abilities at all times, but You don't really need that fast of access to abilities in a game like EverQuest or Monsters and Memories. So that's why I opted to do a control scheme based more on EverQuest Online Adventures for the PS2, which uses the same menu system here, because that was the only game in history, as far as I'm aware, that was an MMORPG exclusively designed to play with a controller and never on a PC. In any case, pretty simple. So I'm going to target my giant rat here, for example, and I'm going to use root on it with triangle. Turn on auto attack. There we go. And then we'll nuke him with a fireball. And this is pretty standard fighty stuff. But as you see, I can cycle through various different moves. Go ahead and hit him with a shock of lightning. And there you go. So now let's talk about looting while we got him dead here. In cursor mode, you can just right click like you would if you were actually using a mouse. But in action mode, it's R2, which is also right click either way. But you use this white dot next to my head here to aim where I'm going to try to loot. So I'll do that. This enters a special loot mode, which works mostly the same as cursor mode, except that the first time I tap the D-pad in any direction, it will jump my cursor over to the beginning of the loot window. It will then use the hotspots feature to be able to quickly target the different things to loot. For each one of them, I tap R2, like so, and loot done. Pretty easy stuff. If I start moving forward, it automatically goes back to action mode. So it's actually pretty quick. You can tap R2, quickly grab the loot with D-pad on R2, move forward, and you're done. Easy peasy. While I'm here, I also wanted to talk about the menu in the top right and the icons that it contains and how that actually works. It's not pulling any graphic data from the hard drive or anything. What it's actually doing is copying these icons directly from another part of the screen while simultaneously hiding that part of the screen by putting a black overlay on top of it. So if I cancel out of action mode, back into cursor mode, you can see here that there is these icons over here. That is what's being copied to the menu over on the top right when I'm in action mode, and then it puts a black square over top of it. But in order for that to work, the application needs to know exactly where these icons are to copy from, and if they're moved and don't match what it thinks they are, then it will grab some other random data. So I'm going to turn my viewport back to full size. Normally I keep it 4:3 because in EverQuest it makes it so that you get to see more vertically, because just, weird old game quirk. So we'll do that. And I'm doing this to show you what happens if I move this. So again, here's what it looks like normally. But now, if I unlock this window and move this around, suddenly now it's just grabbing whatever stuff is over there. You can see my mask is now exposed. The little black area over here on the left, you can see, is now covering the wrong thing, and the icons over on the right are all messed up because it's just copying some random part of the background now. Back in Monsters and Memories now, let's talk about how you target yourself and your group members, which is all done through the L1 key. If you tap L1, you target yourself. If you continue to tap L1, you will target different group members. Of course, I don't have any group members right now, but the application has no way of knowing how many group members you currently have, so it always assumes that you have a full group. This could be a little annoying sometimes in the fact that if I'm in the second spot here and I want to get back to myself, I have to tap it a bunch of times to cycle back around. One way to get around that is to just press circle to cancel target, and then back to next time you push L1 will be back to you again. Another way is to hold L1 and push up and down on the D-pad, which allows you to quickly go both directions instead of just down and grabbing. You can also hold L1 and push right on the D-pad to target the same target more than once, which is useful for targeting their pet instead. Finally, a special feature is that you can hold L1 and push left on the D-pad to mark a group member as the default target instead of yourself, like so. Notice it made a little extra white outline around the yellow dot there. This is useful, for instance, for a cleric to be able to quickly target the main tank like so, or for a DPS who wants to target the main assist and then assist them. Speaking of which, holding L1 and tapping R1 is the shortcut for the assist key. I actually have in my personal customized control scheme a feature where if you use L1 to target any group member besides yourself, and then just tap R1 immediately after, it will assume you want to assist them rather than target the nearest enemy, which is what R1 normally does. Okay, for this final segment, let's talk about a couple of little bonus features and some customization stuff. One bonus feature is auto strafe run, which allows you to move in more directions than just forward for auto run. To do this, you move in whatever direction you want to keep moving in. We'll say moving backwards. Hold down L2 and click in with the left stick like you're trying to do auto run, and you will continue moving in that direction. You can still steer a little bit with your right stick and left stick, but as soon as you push forward or back, it will stop doing that. This is especially useful if you've played EverQuest in that game, because strafe running is faster than regular running, so you can start strafe running, hold on L2, click in L3, and now you are auto strafe running and can still steer with your analog stick. Another bonus feature that I have in my personal profile, but not in the default one, although again mine is available for use, is holding L2 and pressing left and right on the D-pad to use Windows magnifier, which I use to zoom in on these tiny fonts. So let's go ahead and show where that's set up in the text files. This is the one that is my personal setup that does come with the app. You can see here I have bound strafe left and strafe right to common period, just because they were available, and I just use that for smoothing out some transitions and stuff. They're not really strictly necessary that you have these, but if you want to use this, you need to make sure that they're bound to the same thing in the game, which is why my zip file included the controls.json file for those two buttons being mapped. I have assist on hotbar 10 and drag corpse on hotbar 9, which are these here, which is why I included the hotbar stuff in the zip file with my UI stuff. I have the L1 then R1 to quick assist a group member here as a bonus feature. This is a backdrop I added behind the commands menu, or on top of the commands menu behind the main menu to make that a little easier to see. Because I moved the commands menu down here in the same spot to get it out of the way, which is what this does. I moved the abilities menu slightly just to make things work with my buff bar and everything, which is what these are for. I moved the hotbar up here instead of down in the middle to get above my chat box. I just thought that worked better. And the aura bar next to it. Here you can see the magnifier feature I just mentioned with L2 plus left or right on the D-pad for using the Windows plus and Windows minus keys, which is how you have access to that in Windows 10 or 11. And these are just added by the tutorial here when I was showing how to add macros at runtime. All this customization stuff and more is documented heavily on the project page in this giant README file. So if you really want to get into that stuff, you can look there, or you can join my Discord channel and ask me there. If you want help with customizing something, I'll probably be willing to help you with that. And you can add a bunch more customization stuff than I show here. For example, if you wanted to make it so L1 and R1 are swapped without having to go and change all the places they're mentioned in the profile, you can just add Gamepad and say L1 equals R1 and R1 equals L1, and that will make it so those buttons are swapped for what they do, or any number of other adjustments you want to make. You can move stuff around, make different layers and everything. It's all documented there. Anyway, hopefully somebody will find some of this information helpful, and good luck using the MMO Gamepad overlay to play Monsters and Memories or EverQuest or maybe EverCraft Online or who knows what else people might make profiles for. Thanks for watching.